Avoidants retreat when they feel pressured, and this single truth can unlock so much understanding in relationships. At first glance, it may look like they simply don't care or that they're indifferent to intimacy, but the reality is far more nuanced. An avoidant attachment style is often born out of early experiences where closeness felt unsafe or overwhelming, so as adults, avoidants subconsciously associate pressure with danger. When someone leans in too quickly, asks for too much too soon, or shows an intensity of affection that feels consuming, the avoidant doesn't interpret it as love, they interpret it as a threat to their autonomy. Their nervous system reacts in self-defense, and their instinct is to pull back, create distance, or even disappear for a time. This isn't about cruelty, it's about survival, and it is critical to recognize that distinction. To the partner on the other side, this retreat can feel confusing and painful. They may think, why did everything feel so good one day and then vanish the next? The shift can seem sudden, almost like a switch flipped, but it is actually a pattern driven by the avoidant's underlying fear. Pressure, whether real or perceived, magnifies that fear. Even something as subtle as texting too frequently, pushing for deeper commitment too fast, or needing constant reassurance can trip the wire. The avoidant feels engulfed, and the more they feel engulfed, the more they retreat. It's not the love itself they are running from, it's the loss of independence they associate with love. This distinction is essential because it means that the retreat is not a rejection of the partner's worth, but a coping mechanism to preserve their own sense of safety. Understanding this mechanism helps you approach avoidance differently. Instead of meeting their retreat with panic, chasing, or demands for closeness, which only reinforces their fears, the more effective strategy is to pause and breathe. You create space that communicates, I respect your boundaries, and I don't need to smother you to feel connected. This shift is powerful because it reframes the relationship as one where closeness is chosen, not forced. An avoidant who feels pressured runs, but an avoidant who feels safe will gradually open up. They need to learn that intimacy doesn't mean losing themselves, and that lesson is best taught through consistent calmness and respect. It's also important to realize that avoidants are not incapable of love. They can feel deeply, they can care profoundly, and they can be loyal partners. Their retreat is not proof of absence of feeling, it is proof of a fragile balance they are trying to manage. If you can show them that love can exist without suffocation, you transform their experience of intimacy. You become the person who represents both closeness and freedom, a rare combination that dissolves their instinct to flee. This doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen through patience, empathy, and the discipline of not overreacting when they retreat. So when you notice an avoidant withdrawing, resist the urge to interpret it as abandonment or rejection. Instead, see it as their old pattern resurfacing and remind yourself that pressure is the trigger. The antidote is not more pressure, but more trust in yourself and in the bond you are building. When you master this balance, the retreat loses its power, and over time, the avoidant learns that they don't have to disappear to protect themselves. That is when retreat is replaced by return and distance is replaced by devotion. When someone with an avoidant attachment style begins to pull away, the most natural instinct is often the worst possible response. You feel the distance growing, you sense the silence creeping in, and suddenly your mind goes into panic mode. You start thinking that if you don't act quickly, you'll lose them forever. The chase begins, not always in dramatic ways, but in small, subtle actions. Maybe you send one more text than you should. Maybe you try to force a conversation about where things are going. Maybe you show up more available than you truly want to be just to bridge the gap. What you don't realize in those moments is that every extra step toward them can feel like an extra step of pressure, and for the avoidant, pressure equals danger. This is where the paradox comes in. When you chase someone who is withdrawing, you don't pull them closer, you push them further away. The very thing you want most, their closeness, becomes impossible because you've triggered their deepest fear of being trapped. Think about it from their perspective. Avoidants are wired to protect their independence above all else. The second they feel that independence is threatened, even by someone they love, their defense system kicks in. They retreat to restore balance. If you pursue them during that retreat, They don't experience your love as affection. They experience it as control. So what should you do instead? The answer is counterintuitive, which is why most people struggle with it. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't demand explanations. You let them retreat and you focus on grounding yourself. By showing that you can tolerate distance without falling apart, you communicate something powerful: you are safe. You are not going to smother them, you are not going to punish them, and you are not going to make their need for space mean something it doesn't. This steadiness creates trust because the avoidant starts to realize that their closeness with you doesn't automatically mean they'll lose themselves. There is a strength in not chasing that goes beyond just managing the avoidant. It's about reclaiming your own self-worth. When you refuse to chase, you remind yourself that your value doesn't depend on anyone else's immediate response. You show that you are capable of standing strong in the uncertainty. And the truth is, people are drawn to that kind of strength. Even an avoidant who is hypersensitive to control will feel more magnetized to someone who radiates confidence in themselves and doesn't collapse into panic when given space. It's also important to remember that not chasing doesn't mean ignoring or playing games. You're not pretending to be unavailable. You're simply aligning with reality in a way that honors both people. If they need distance, you allow it without resentment, and in the meantime, you invest in your own life, your passions, your friendships, your growth. You model what healthy independence looks like, which ironically makes you more attractive to someone who fears losing their independence. You transform yourself from a pursuer into a partner who embodies balance. Over time, this approach builds something an avoidant secretly craves but rarely admits: security. They begin to associate you with calm, not chaos. They learn that being close to you doesn't mean being controlled. They see that love can exist without pressure, intimacy can exist without suffocation, and connection can coexist with freedom. When that realization clicks, you no longer need to chase, because they'll start coming to you. And when they do, it won't be out of fear or obligation. It will be because in you, they've found what they've been running from their whole lives: closeness that feels like freedom. Peace over pressure is one of the most powerful principles in human connection, and it becomes even more important when you're dealing with someone who has an avoidant attachment style. At its core, this principle means that love and closeness thrive in an environment where both people feel at ease rather than in an atmosphere of force or expectation. Many of us, often without realizing it, make the mistake of equating intensity with intimacy. We push, we chase, we demand answers, and we apply pressure in the name of wanting closeness. But for someone who is wired to fear being trapped, this pressure doesn't bring them closer, it drives them away. Peace, on the other hand, is what makes them feel safe enough to stay. When you operate from peace, you remove the weight of expectation from the relationship. You no longer try to force moments of intimacy or cling to constant reassurance. Instead, you create a rhythm where both people can breathe. Peace means saying, "I'm here, but I don't need to control how you show up." That kind of energy is magnetic because it communicates self-confidence and security. It tells the other person that you are not basing your value on whether they lean in or step back. You are choosing calm presence over desperate pursuit. Avoidants in particular pick up on this immediately. They know the difference between someone who wants to hold them versus someone who wants to hold them down. Pressure makes a person feel small, as if every move they make is being evaluated against another person's invisible checklist. Peace does the opposite. It opens the space for them to express themselves in their own time, in their own way, without fear of judgment. That doesn't mean you tolerate poor behavior or accept neglect. It means you show that your sense of self is not shaken by their temporary distance. You give them the gift of space without making it feel like punishment. Ironically, this often inspires them to come back more quickly because they realize they won't lose your warmth just because they needed a little room. Imagine two people dancing. One partner keeps pulling and dragging, trying to force the other into step. That's pressure. The dance becomes rigid, awkward, and exhausting. But when one partner leads with grace, giving room for freedom of movement while maintaining connection, the dance becomes beautiful. That is peace. In relationships, this translates to a gentle steadiness in your energy. Instead of anxiously waiting for a text or demanding an answer right now. You lean into your own life, your passions, your joy. You show that your world doesn't collapse because of a pause. And in that steadiness, the avoidant sees something rare, love that does not suffocate, attention that does not drain. Peace is also powerful because it puts you in control of your own emotional state. Pressure often comes from fear, the fear of being abandoned, the fear of being unworthy, the fear of not getting what you want. But when you choose peace, you take that fear out of the driver's seat. You remind yourself that closeness cannot be forced, only inspired. You anchor yourself in the truth that your value is not dependent on another person's speed of opening up. This inner calm radiates outward, creating a climate where genuine intimacy can grow. For avoidants, love often feels dangerous because it threatens their sense of independence. But when you bring peace instead of pressure, you rewrite that script. You show them that intimacy can actually coexist with freedom. They begin to experience closeness as a choice, not a cage. And when they realize that being with you means they don't have to fight for air, they no longer see distance as survival. They see connection as home. That's the power of peace over pressure. It doesn't just change how you show up. It changes what love feels like to the person receiving it. Respecting someone's space without punishment is one of the most powerful and transformative things you can do in any relationship, but it becomes absolutely essential when you are dealing with a partner who leans avoidant. People with avoidant tendencies are not running from love because they don't care, and they are not distancing themselves because you are unworthy of closeness. They pull away because closeness often triggers in them a fear of losing independence, of being engulfed, of not having the freedom to breathe. If you respond to that withdrawal with anger, guilt, or punishment, you simply reinforce the very fear they are trying to escape. You confirm to them that intimacy equals control, and that dynamic will only push them further away. The real key is learning how to hold your own boundaries while respecting theirs, which builds safety and shows them that love can coexist with freedom. Respecting space means you can allow someone to have their moments of distance without making it about rejection. That doesn't mean you ignore your own needs or play a passive role. It means you acknowledge that their need for breathing room doesn't have to be a personal insult. Instead of sending 10 messages demanding answers, you give them the time they need while staying anchored in your own life. You keep your energy steady. You communicate once clearly and kindly, and then you let your actions show that you are grounded enough not to spiral when they step back. That stability is what builds trust, because it demonstrates that you are not going to collapse under the pressure of temporary distance. It also signals that you are not secretly trying to control them through emotional manipulation, which is a fear many avoidants carry from past experiences. When you respect space without punishment, you also create an atmosphere of curiosity rather than conflict. Instead of assuming the worst, you allow the relationship to breathe and unfold naturally. This doesn't mean you hide your feelings. It means you express them in a way that doesn't demand instant change. For example, you might say, "I value closeness, and sometimes when you need space, it can be a little hard for me, but I want you to know I respect it." That simple statement shows honesty about your experience while still affirming their right to take time. You've revealed your truth without trying to make them wrong, and that balance encourages them to open up more in the long run. Another important part of this principle is that respect must be consistent, not conditional. Many people say they understand when their partner needs space, but in practice they withdraw affection, become cold, or punish with silence. This only deepens the avoidance fear that connection comes with strings attached. If, instead, you remain warm, consistent, and steady, you show them that their need for independence doesn't threaten the bond. They begin to learn that love doesn't always come with emotional booby traps. Over time, that safety reduces their urge to pull away because they no longer feel that being close to you requires them to sacrifice their autonomy. The truth is, everyone, avoidant or not, wants to feel safe in love. But avoidants require an extra layer of reassurance that safety doesn't mean surrender. When you can hold steady during moments of distance, you teach them that intimacy can coexist with independence. You become the person who doesn't punish but instead inspires. And when that realization sets in, You stop being just another person in their lives. You become the one they trust enough to finally lean into. Respecting their space without punishment isn't about tolerating neglect or silencing your needs. It's about creating a dynamic where both people can show up fully with freedom and connection woven together. That is what makes love sustainable, and that is how you turn distance into devotion. Love as freedom, not control, is one of the most powerful truths we can embrace in our relationships, and yet it is the one we most often forget when our emotions take over. Too many people confuse love with possession, with the need to hold on tightly to manage every movement, every choice, every interaction their partner has. The irony is that the tighter we grip, the more we strangle the very bond we're trying to protect. Real love flourishes in an atmosphere where both people can breathe, where individuality is not erased but celebrated, and where closeness doesn't come at the expense of autonomy. Think about the times in your life when you felt most drawn to someone. Was it when they were demanding your constant attention, monitoring your every move, questioning every decision? Or was it when they made you feel both deeply cared for and completely free to be yourself? The answer is almost always the latter. We fall in love not with cages but with wings. We are inspired by people who give us the courage to stretch into our own space, who trust us enough not to micromanage our existence. That sense of freedom is intoxicating because it tells us that love is not there to shrink us, but to expand us. This is especially true when we're dealing with avoidant partners, those who are naturally wary of closeness. For them, love often comes with the fear of being consumed or trapped. When they sense control, their instincts tell them to retreat, to create distance before they lose themselves. But when you show them that being with you doesn't require them to surrender their independence, everything changes. You shift from being a source of pressure to being a source of peace. You become the person they want to lean into, not the person they feel they must escape from. In this way, love becomes a sanctuary instead of a prison. But make no mistake, giving freedom doesn't mean indifference. It's not about turning away or pretending not to care. It's about holding space without holding chains. It's about saying, I want you, but I don't need to control you. I desire closeness, but I don't demand it. That balance creates a trust that is far stronger than control ever could. Control breeds resistance, freedom breeds devotion. The partner who feels they can breathe around you is far more likely to choose you over and over again than the one who feels cornered. When love is freedom, intimacy actually deepens. People feel safer to reveal who they are because they know they won't be punished for it. They can express their fears, their flaws, and their dreams without worrying that it will be used against them. Control makes people hide, freedom makes people open. And in that openness, true connection is born. It is not a diluted love, but a richer, more authentic one. It is a love that says, as I see you, I trust you, and I welcome the fullness of who you are. In the end, love as freedom, not control, isn't just a strategy for relationships, it's a philosophy of living. It recognizes that no one belongs to us, and that real loyalty cannot be demanded, it must be chosen. When you embody that truth, you don't just keep someone hooked, you inspire a devotion that runs deeper than obligation. You create a bond not built on fear of loss, but on joy and presence. And that kind of love doesn't fade under pressure, it grows stronger because it gives both hearts room to breathe. Become the exception, not the option, is more than just a catchy phrase. It's a shift in how you show up in your relationships and in your life. Most people unknowingly present themselves as an option because they rely on availability, over-explanation, or constant reassurance to keep someone's attention. They believe that if they do more, give more, sacrifice more, they'll earn permanence. But that behavior only teaches others that your value lies in your willingness to chase. The truth is, people don't commit deeply to those who are always bending. They commit to those who stand out, those who exude calm strength, and those who create an experience that feels irreplaceable. That's what being the exception means. It's showing that your worth doesn't hinge on another person's attention, but on the life and energy you bring into every interaction. An avoidant, in particular, tests this difference constantly. When they pull away, they're subconsciously asking, will you collapse into panic, or will you remain grounded in your own world? If you collapse, You become like everyone else. They've seen this pattern before, and it confirms their fear that closeness equals pressure. But if you stand firm, if you don't punish or cling, if you continue to live fully and give love without chasing, you become something rare. You become the exception. You're not trying to control them. You're showing them that their independence is not only safe, but celebrated in your presence. That shift doesn't just ease their fears, it rewrites their entire experience of intimacy. Being the exception also means embodying confidence in your own standards. You don't accept breadcrumbs of affection. You don't beg for scraps of attention. You know that you bring peace, joy, and value into someone's life, and you allow your actions to speak for you. This doesn't come from arrogance, but from self-respect. People feel this difference immediately. When someone realizes that losing you would actually cost them something irreplaceable, they begin to choose differently. They no longer see you as an option in a lineup of possibilities. They start to recognize you as the one person who brings out the best in them without threatening their sense of self. That is where devotion begins. Avoidants, at their core, crave safety, but fear dependency. If you can be the person who represents love without chains, commitment without suffocation, you become the rare exception they didn't think existed. You show them that it's possible to be close without being controlled. You demonstrate that your relationship is not about limiting them, but about expanding what's possible when two people respect each other's space and closeness equally. When you live this out, you stop chasing their attention and instead attract their investment. They begin to lean into you, not because they feel forced, but because you've shown them what freedom within love actually feels like. To become the exception, you don't need to change who you are. You need to align more deeply with your true value. Build a life that is rich, confident, and purposeful, whether or not someone else is beside you. Radiate calm rather than panic, connection rather than control. That kind of presence isn't common, and that's why it's unforgettable. When you embody it, avoidants who once ran from intimacy will stay, not because you trapped them, but because they finally found what they didn't know they were searching for. That is how you stop being an option and start being the exception. The person who transforms fear into safety and distance into devotion.